Whenever I make a movie, it's about challenging myself to become a better filmmaker. So this way I know what to do.
Welcome to the very first episode of the Indie Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Samuel L. Fronsman, and on this show, I want to help pull back the curtain and discuss the process of independent filmmaking by talking to some of the brightest and most talented individuals in the industry. And for that reason, I am very honored to introduce the show's very first guest, award-winning filmmaker and Hall of Famer Johnny K. Woo.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. It's a little bit embarrassing to find out that I'm the first one, so I'm gonna be very nervous now.
No, absolutely no pressure. Honestly, when it was coming down to it, and I was thinking, who would be the perfect first guest to have on the show? You were one of the first people that came to mind, and so it's very great having you on here.
Thank you.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, for those who might not be as familiar with your work, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and some of the work that you've done?
Sure. I have been making movies since 1998. Started with a friend of mine. We joined together, started a business called Media Design Imaging. We did a bunch of different work for clients, and then doing free time, we started putting together some films and feature films, short films. But then a year later, he just couldn't handle it anymore because there was lots more pressure. So he decided to quit and pursue music performances, which is kind of different, but almost the same thing. There'll be lots of stress. Since then, I've been doing it by myself and getting a lot of interns and people that work for me and continue making movies and feature short films. Got very fortunate enough, back in 2005, we did a feature film called The Rapture and did really, really well in premiering that, winning a bunch of awards. And since then, I've been continuing making these films, different films, and try to get better. Whenever I make a movie, it's about challenging myself to become a better filmmaker. So this way I know what to do. Because when you do work for a corporate, you stick to what they ask you to do. So that's a little bit different.
So you mentioned something that I want to kind of touch on a little bit because I can definitely speak to it. This is a stressful industry. It can get hectic. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll pull back the curtain a little bit for those watching or listening right now. We spent like a half hour to 45 minutes just trying to start this podcast because we were facing technical difficulties.
Exactly.
So how do you work through that? What's your process of balancing the stress and keeping that fun and keeping that enjoyment in the
Uh,
field?
what I usually do is a week before we have a meeting with all the crew members and going through all the different shots in the sense of what kind of camera we use, what kind of equipment we need to use. And I suggest every crew member that are actually going to bring the cameras to test it out beforehand. I personally will test out my cameras and everything else, made everything, charge everything up on Thursday before the shoot. And because we usually shoot on weekends and then make sure everything works. When if we do have a problem with any certain kind of codec or a style or imagery issues, we test it out beforehand. Because you can Google everything you want on YouTube, but if you don't have the first-hand experience, whatever you learn, it may be just textbook experience that may not apply when you go in person and do it in person.
Yeah.
So that help a lot with elimination of stress, and make sure the actors don't bother me the day before. I usually tell all the actors, do not ever email me the day before because I need the day before to relax and just to think about the headache I'm going to get the day off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I trust me. I've definitely understood that. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about your newest movie that you just did,
Sure.
Bullets, Brothers, and Blood.
Uh-huh.
What can you tell the audience about that one?
Blood Brothers and Blood was a project that was reached out to me by Gaines Strauss from Columbus, Ohio. He needed somebody can do action film, and he thought maybe I can be interested in that. So he commissioned me and our team here to do a very, very low, almost no budget project we did together. It's about a person who is a army ranger who accidentally got mistaken by a uh, gangster, and so everybody fight trying to chase him and to attack him while he's trying to figure out what the heck's going on with his life. And so it's a very much a thriller drama kind of piece, but with a bunch of action in there, the storyline. When we first got it done and May or March of this past year, is it March yet or this year? March of this year, sorry. We have a premiere and it did really well. Actually, not this year, last year, March last year. Wow, I can't remember. Time really flies. We also noticed that we had to re-edit again to make it a little bit better and more interesting. So we adjusted the scenes. I think you watched the one on Amazon already. Have you, Sam?
I was at the premiere, so
Okay.
I saw it there at the Lakeshore Cinema.
Okay, you saw the premiere, and that version had altered a little bit. We changed a little bit at the beginning to make it a little more interesting for most of the audience because after the premiere, we felt like it was a little too slow. So we had to re-edit it again.
Okay, cool. Where can people watch it now then?
Everyone can watch it now on Amazon Prime, or you can actually get it now on Tubi for free. And if you do have Verizon TV or other different streaming platform, you should be able to find them. We use a lot of local talents. Diversity is very important for me. So everybody we have here, we have Shannon, Jerry, Angel, Ashley, and a bunch of people. And we have a wonderful cast and crew. So I can't even complain about them. They did a
That's
wonderful job.
great. Yeah, definitely. And I did cover Bullish Brothers in Blood too on the Indie Spotlight
Thank you.
series,
Thank you.
and so for those of you that are catching up with on YouTube that's been following Franz Productions, definitely go in the description of this video, and I'll have link to it both the Amazon Prime and Tubi, so you can go ahead and check out Bullish Brothers in Blood. It's definitely well worth the watch. So I wanted to talk about something else with it too. You were talking about how it was almost a no budget feature, which I just got done with my first no budget feature. So what's your process, especially for a movie with as much action and stunt choreography and fight sequences and visual effects? Like, how do you pull that off with very little money and very little resources?
It's mostly about the team. We have a wonderful team that work together, and so we get all the cast and crew doing it for basically no cost. So they did volunteer the time, and the reason we do that that's the reason why we actually do it in the weekends. So we pick up weekends that everybody are available, and then use that time to get it work. I did not expect that we actually shot the whole thing in 10 days. I thought we could spend more time to that, but the organizational part of it is really wonderful. We got really great people like Nick Malbach helping us, AD, assistant director, and a producer for the event or the festival. We have camera crew member who know what they're doing. We got Sean Allen, who the DP, it's wonderful. Scott Morrison, Pauline, everybody chime in to do their job. And so make it work. The interesting part was during that time when we were filming, I was very sick. I was actually got diagnosed to have a blockage on my heart. One of the vessels on my heart had a blockage and had very, very high blood pressure. So they was trying to make the medicine work for me, but still not working 100%. So that took a toll on my body and my physical health. But then again, all the cast and crew, they knew about it and they pick out the slack and make it work. And yeah, the one other thing we also do is we also break into two teams. We had two different units to shoot filming at the same time. So that actually made it quicker and easier to get it done in 10 days.
Okay. So obviously you've been in this industry for a long time. I mean, since the late 90s. You said 98, correct?
Yeah.
So in that amount of time, I'm sure that you've learned a lot and grown a lot in your approach. How would you say like some of those earlier experiences shaped the way that you come into a project now, both as a producer and as a director?
So the most important thing for me is every time I do a movie, is that be able to challenge myself to become a better filmmaker. So the past experience has actually shaped the way I think, the way I do things now. If I didn't have this experience, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now, and that's very important to me. And so if you don't see a improvement in my filming skill, as a producer, as an editor, as a director, then there's something wrong with my project, something wrong with me. So if you had to go back and watch, if you had a chance, check out my first movie, The Rapture. Actually, first release movie, The Rapture on Tubi, and then check out Inner Self, and then check out Immortal Kombat: The Code, and then check out Within the Society, and then check out Bullet Brothers in Blood, and tell me whether or not I have improved my skill or not. If I did not, then I might have to go back and study again.
Well, I've seen all of them, so I can definitely say that each one is like taking. And I think I even mentioned this in the indie spotlight videos. The way I described it is like I would say, yeah, Johnny took what he started here and he just went to like level 2 and level 3 and just kept. It was like these building blocks of getting, you know, more and more, elaborate with it. To where Bullets, Brothers, and Blood, I think, is all around. By far like your best work yet, and it's
Thank you.
like it's only going to keep getting better. Yeah, no problem. So something else I was thinking of that you brought up was actually talking about building a good team and getting a very solid cast and crew. So just focusing on the crew aspect about that, how many would you say your crew, how do you go about bringing on crew, and how many of these people also were crew on previous projects that you continue to work with?
I say about 80% of the current crew are people who I've been working with in the past. So what I usually do is I will also bring in about 20% of new people who want to work with me to see whether they work out. And if they don't work out, it's very easy to find out that whether or not they being neglected. So if they don't work out with me, I don't ask them back anymore. Or if they don't work really well as a team player, they're only going to be on the set for 1 day or 2 days. That's about it. A few people are going to watch this, going to get very, very upset with me, but that's the truth. We do have a very, very cohesive and very strong team together. So if a team player is a person is not a team player, we don't want them back because they actually bring down the morale of everybody else, and that's not something we want. And so most of the people we have in the crew wise are people I've always been working with. Scott Brosha, Scott Morrison, Pauline, Nick, Andrew Chapman, Keith, and everybody else that in the crew that you see. Chad had been there one time and he's wonderful, so I'm gonna probably bring him back again in the future if he's available. But now he's too busy doing everything else, so that's a different story. So yeah, um, it's about being able to work together as a team. If you have a crew member come to the set and started boasting him herself how great she is, how talented they are, and this and that, then it's not gonna work. Or a crew member who come in who always say, "You should do this, you should do that," acting like he or she is a director. No, that's not gonna work. I'm the director. You are the crew member. You just have to do your job. You can make suggestions, but don't constantly interrupting my decision.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Because I can say on my end personally, there is a difference. I'm glad you brought up kind of like it's offering suggestions versus trying to kind of take over the set and monopolize it.
Yeah,
Because I can say on any set that I'm running, I always want to be the director that people can come up to and say, hey, I have an idea. Can we try this?
right.
But I like it when people come up to me directly and not just shout it out across the room and try to say, hey, we should do it like this. This is better.
Exactly.
Because you don't want to break that hierarchy of command, because once you kind of lose that, then it's hard to regain that trust both with
Exactly.
the cast and with the other crew.
Yeah, I'm very proud of and proud of what we have, and I usually don't like people coming in here and change everything because he or she have a great, crazy, great idea, and it just doesn't work. Because that's the reason why the day before I use the time to study the script, study the environment, study the location, study the shots I want, and what kind of vision I have, and get everything together. And so I have all those things packed in my brain. Go to the set and suddenly somebody say you should do this way instead of this way. No, it doesn't work that way because it's not your vision, it's my vision. And so if a crew member cannot understand that and still insisting, then I was like, you know what, thank you very much, maybe you don't come back again next week. We don't need you anymore, we got somebody else.
Right. Right, and what one thing that I love too, just in general about the film community here in Northeast Ohio, especially with what you have going on with the Cleveland Indie Club, or with what I'm building here too with the Indie Spotlight series and everything like that,
Yes.
is it does feel like a very tight community where there's so many people that want to get involved and there's so many options to get involved. What advice do you kind of have for somebody that's kind of fresh in, that wants to get involved in film, but they don't know anybody, they've never been on somebody's project, they haven't been able to build that team yet?
For anybody who want to get involved and want to be part of the team, just be humble and be part of it and participate as many projects you can, whether paid or not paid, doesn't really matters. And most importantly is you can learn and experience. Observe every director, every producer, how they work, and then decide whether or not you want to work with them or not. There may be people, I do have some people who doesn't want to work with me because I'm very, very strict what I want to do. So that's okay. That's the reason why there's so many people. We have such a community here that anybody can go to anyone to work with. So it's not about that. It's more about whether or not you learn something from the director or producer that you work with, or you want to come back, or whether or not they can offer you something that you learn. If you did not learn anything from the director, you know this is not a person you want to continue working with. It's the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, I think, and this is just the way I look at it is I always say, it is always about what you learn, but I think that you have just as much to learn from being on a set that's not ran well as you do from a set that is ran well.
Yes.
Because when you're on a set that you can, if you can pinpoint problems, now never go up to the director and say, hey, I don't think you're doing this right, because that's just rude. But you can make those mental notes in the back of your head of, I didn't really care for the way that this was done. Maybe I'll do it differently for me. And if you're not always learning, you're not gonna
Exactly.
progress and grow. So
So one thing also had
yeah,
to remember, every story that a director has, it's very different from the other director. If you put four directors in one room and try to make a scene, you're gonna have probably 20 different versions of that scene coming out, because every director have different way to tell the story. So it's no such thing about your story is worse than mine, or my way to do things better than yours. It's more about how you work with the team, how you treat your team, how you tell the story, and whether or not it works or not. It's telling the story is the most important part.
absolutely.
Yep.
And part of that story too is with the cast and finding the right actors to bring those characters to life. So how do you go about casting? How do what's the audition process like for a Johnny Woo movie?
For this later ones, Ballet Brothers and Blood, we did very basic audition. We did some ask people to submit their character they would be interested, and then we ask them to send out a video so I can watch a little bit. Then we do a Zoom audition, and after that, Gaines and I we sat down with the other producer and talk about how we can match and make it work. Originally, the role of Ryan and Will are brothers, but then because we love the way that Matt Kane and Jerry can work together, so we made it as a Foster brothers. It make it work. That's it. So we changed that story a little bit just for their sake. We also love Bernard so much. We love his role too so much that we actually wrote a role for him to be part of it and make it work. And it's so basically that's the whole bottom line to combine. And then the day of the shoot, we actually let the actors uh, were flexible with their lines. We don't want the line to be so hard that he had to do it a certain way, because certain times an actor understand that the line is based on person experience, and if they don't experience that perspective, they wouldn't be able to say those lines correctly. So you gotta think of that way. Of course, you're gonna have a character maybe is a rocket scientist, so you won't be the rocket scientist talking very much like a regular person. You'll be talking more like a crazy scientist person. So certain lines had to be strict, but not all the time. So one a good example with the Blood and Brothers and Blood is cursing. We didn't have a lot of cursing in the inside the script, but somehow Martin that plays games decided to use it in his character, which actually worked out really well. So we said, well, let's keep it there, like keep it moving forward. So that's how flexible we want to be the actors, so they can be excel in their acting opportunities.
I love that, and I think that right there is a key piece of advice too for anyone that wants to direct, because I'm the same way on my sets. I love it when the actors kind of find the character and make it their own. And
Right.
I think even I'd say even for a director, a writer director that's very like, hey, I really love the way this line was written, give it a chance. You have more than one take. If you don't like what the way that that's changed and you want to go back to the original line, do that in take two. You have more than one option on there, and I
Exactly.
think That's a key thing to remember is you have that flexibility, especially in the independent world, you
Right,
know.
right. Yeah, that's
Um,
exactly how it is. So yeah.
so and not I want to move on a little bit, still on the topic of working with your actors, but more in terms of the action sequences and the some of the fight choreography and stunts. I mean, there's a lot of stunt work, not just in Bullet, Feathers, and Blood, but in all of your movies. And how do you balance, crafting these very elaborate fight scenes while at the same time, they look good, but they're also safely performed and everybody, safety's number one. How do you balance that between getting it how you want it to look and also making sure that all the talent or any stunt performers are safe while performing it?
So what for all the stunt works and fightings, we usually tell the fight choreographers to prepare them and be creative as possible. We give them some important key role. For example, we said, all right, you're gonna have a fight sequences. Uh, the one actor need to pull out the sword, the knife first, and then he's gonna stab the other character maybe after 2 minutes of fighting, and then that character will pull out the knife and then counter stab back to the first actor. So we tell the kind of story and then have the choreographer to choreograph the whole fight sequences. At the same time, we give them at least 2 months to 3 months to rehearse. They're not going to rehearse every day, but they maybe rehearse once a week. And that will have to build them confident and build in the repetitiveness to make sure that they can remember the techniques. We are working right now a short film coming up pretty soon called The Hunt. We're actually going to be fighting against 20 people with sword fighting. So we are going to be starting rehearsing in December. So we can get it all right this way. In March we can actually filming it. So all the preparation, it's like you go to a theater, watch a show. You got everybody, all the actors coming to rehearse all the time. So we want to do that too with all the fight sequences to make sure they're actually good. And this will help minimize hurt anybody get hurt and also improve the look of it on screen. And again, we also going to have a safety person there, an EMS or safe medic to be on set while we have a more complicated fight sequences to be made. So safety is number one. Yeah.
So, what's your process like in terms of actually scheduling out the production, especially factoring in rehearsal days? How do you go about getting everyone on the same page for scheduling?
So we break a lot of different groups on Facebook chat, group chat. We have group that's only for martial art training. We group only for certain scenes. Then we had to say, okay, we want to shoot this scene soon, but I want to make sure you guys have 2 months ahead of time to practice. Do as much you can to do, and then let me know what day you guys all can be available to shoot. So we just schedule in a big spreadsheet, put different dates that we have planned already originally, and see which actor is available. The scheduling is the most headache part of all of every time we have a scheduling planning, it becomes something that we have to pull our hair out because then we got everything planned out and then somebody suddenly this actor said, I'm so sorry I had to work that day, can we actually schedule another day? Then you had to like screaming and yelling and cursing in the background. I said, okay, no problem. And then you had to ask everybody else that's involved in that set whether or not they're available the next other days. So we actually do the actor first and then make sure everybody's available and then lock them down. Then we tell the crew members, can you do it this day? For Bottom Brothers and Blood, we have what we call the alternative crew members. So we have crew members who not make it one day. We have other crew members. It's almost like what you do with your project, Sam. I remember you had me, Nick, other people on different days coming to shoot. So that actually help out in coordination. But for the actor, it's always the peanut butter part of it.
Yeah, and and I always do support all the projects that they're in, and
Mhm.
I'll be the person to tag them. Like if I see, hey, so and so's casting right now for this part, I'll go through all my actor friends on Facebook and I'll start tagging their names. But at the same time, I know when I'm making that schedule, I'm like, oh boy, you're in 3 movies right now. They're all shooting at the same time. How are we gonna make that work? But we do, and that's the
Yep.
magic of it.
Yep. That's how it
You make
is.
it work.
Yeah. We make everybody.
So
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If there was something, let's go back 10, 20 years ago, what advice would you give yourself of something that you know now that 10, 20 years ago you had no idea about that you could go back and tell yourself?
More time to rehearse, more time to choreograph, and don't rush to try and film it. The problem with that is, um, Body, Brother, and Blood, we didn't rush to film it. We didn't exactly. We planned for 15 days of filming takes, and then, but the only funny thing is when we put everything together, somehow you end up with 10 days, and that's usually happens. And we don't think about we need to get it everything for 10 days. We said let's schedule 15 days to 30 days to film this and this and this for the whole film. Um, so if I had to tell myself back then, I said probably the same thing. Don't rush it. Don't say that you had to do everything in 15 days, but rather plan it ahead of time. Look at the schedule and see what how you can make it work. And it worked, great. It doesn't work, you got everybody done in 20 days. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I think if I were to look back on anything on In the Hands of Fate and say, where is the one, if I could, and there's more than one, obviously, but if there was one area that I would go back and change,
Yeah.
It would be how many pages I would shoot per day.
What was the highest amount of pages you have for 1 day shoot?
9. However, it was an action scene.
Oh wow!
And we had about 40 to 50 extras on set.
That's crazy.
It was a shootout, and it was a long day. It wasn't our longest day. We actually had one that went a little bit longer, only because we had interior scenes that we shot day for night, but then we had to wait for nighttime to shoot the exterior. But it was 4th of July weekend, so we also had to wait for the fireworks show to end, because of course my location was right next to a park where they were doing a fireworks show, so we couldn't shoot during that. So there was definitely some long days, some long nights on the movie.
Yeah.
And that one day though that we shot 9 pages of action, I can look back and say, you know what, this could have been split into 2 days, because we had everything that was all the exterior. And if we would have wrapped at the exterior part of that scene where we had most of the extras, we would have saved about an extra 4 hours that day. And we could have used that. We could have wrapped early that day, add one more day onto the schedule, do the interior part of it, which we only needed 2 of the extras and just the main cast.
Got it.
But that's why you make your first movie, so you can make your second movie better.
Yeah, you learn from your mistake and make it better. Yeah. So yeah, we usually do it as for my personal sake, I don't want to spend more than 10 hours max. So my set are very short, from 8 hours to 10 hours or something shorter. And doing Body, Brothers, and Blood, because I was also sick, I try my best to have all the dates to be only 8 hours max, and actually work out really well. And in the past, we have like shooting in Mortal Kombat: The Code, where there's one day we plan to do the fight sequence to be 2 days event, and it was outdoor, snowing date time, and it was 20 degrees, very cold. But all the actors do not want to come back the next day, so we hang in there, and took about 15 hours, 16 hours to film the whole thing. The night sequence, you probably remember the sequence where they're actually fighting in the forest outside the snow.
Oh yeah,
that was a 16 hours time shooting, because nobody wanted to go home and come back the next day. And we were like an hour and a half away from everyone, so it was far away, long place, and long hours. But everybody just hanging there made it work, and cold, super cold. At night time we got about 14 something degrees. Warm? I'm sorry.
What do you do to try to keep warm during?
We have outside electrical heaters hanging, one, and then we have two inside the tent that we can actually keep ourselves warm. We also have warmers that put in your feet and hands, so keep your body warm, and that's most of it. A lot of the time we'll have running noses because it was very cold and freezing cold. Yeah, but nobody wanted to go home, so we made it work.
Yeah. Well, it's always cool when you have like people that are that dedicated, that believe in the project too that much, that they're willing to, like, hey, I might be, freezing my ass off right now, but I'm gonna stick it through.
Yep, yep.
I love that, and those are the people that you keep bringing back time and time again.
Yeah, we asked was idea. We say, well, we had 3 more hours to go. You guys want to come back tomorrow and then continue filming? It's like, no, let's get it done tonight. So we stayed until
Yep.
almost midnight.
Wow. Yeah, it's cool. We have all these almost war stories. You can look back and say, wow, remember this crazy event. I know if I were to get into it like right now and tell some of those stories with In the Hands of Fate, I don't know if this podcast would never end.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
There are
so
lots of
many.
stories. Yes.
There's so many. The one I'd say was probably the biggest was that long night where we had the fireworks show. At one point we were all getting so tired because we wrapped at 2 a.m.
Wow.
We ended up wrapping at 2 a.m. that night, and I think it was somewhere around midnight, 12:30, that time frame, where we were staging some of what we were going to be doing with the vehicles, and we're clearing everyone out of the way, and I go up to our makeup artist, and I'm like, what's she doing? She's like sitting over there by the sign, and she's like looking at the spider, and I go up and I'm like, everything okay? She's like, look how beautiful it is. I'm like, you need rest. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I know.
it's
I saw one for the Rapture. My first feature. We actually shot it outside, outdoor, indoor, during the 4th of July weekend. That was a big mistake because we didn't expect to have all the fireworks and all the truck going on back and forth. So we had the ADR the whole project. 95% of the whole story of the movie was ADR. So you can
wow.
you're probably not gonna notice the difference because unless I tell you so, but they are all ADR because of the firework.
Wow. See, I never would have known that.
Yeah.
When I watched it, it never crossed my mind. Like, because I can watch a movie and say like I can pinpoint like, oh, that looked like it was ADR. But when I watched it, if the whole thing was, I did not notice it once.
And
That is
that
not
was
something that stuck
that
out.
was the day of 2005. Remember that time, computer is not that good as compared to now. So everything is painted about. ADR was painted about. Visual effect having the wings and tails, everything put in there. A lot more, we had to count on the person frame by frame. Then put the CGI wings into the person, and then compose everybody again, person again, back into the scenes. A lot of craziness, and yeah, that was crazy. One of my biggest challenge, and it was my first project too. Yeah, not
Yeah.
do that anymore.
Well, one thing that we didn't talk about yet that I want to touch on
Sure.
before we close out the show, because we talked a little bit about on set, pre-production, we talked a little bit about post, but what we never really got into was distribution. And so I think that's something that, and this is even a question selfishly that I'm asking too, but I think it's something that anyone that wants to get into independent film is going to want to know. How do you go about getting distribution, and how do you go about getting not just distribution, but getting good distribution and not getting into a bad deal?
So I have done this kind of a workshop and lecture for many years now, and everything's still the same. Nothing has changed throughout the whole years that I know about distribution. Is 99.9% of distributors out there will not help you make your money. They are helping themselves, making themselves rich with your project, but not making money for you. To be able to find a honest film distributors, it's hard, and unless you know the person, unless you know the distributor well enough, and they are willing to give you a slack or be flexible with you, you're not gonna find one. So nowadays, there are a lot more independent distributors out there, all over the place. There are lots of people who want to be a distributors. So chances of finding a good distributor may be 3%. Now, instead of 99.9% of bad film distributors, now you talk about 97% of bad film distributors. So that number has increased. So what you can do is you can reach out to everybody you see on IMDb that represent your type of movie and see whether they'll be interested. If they're interested, ask them for a agreement so you can review the agreement. If the agreement includes something about they're gonna lock for exclusiveness for 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, it's a no. If they're talking about they're gonna deduct more than $20,000 or $50,000 of expenses, quote unquote expenses, because they can include be a distribution expense, a marketing expense, whatever expense is $50,000 and so or $20,000 up, usually it's a no. So you had to read all the red flags in there. I got fortunate enough to have worked with so many distributors, and because I get to know them, so my deal with them get better and better every year, every time. So with Ballard Brothers and Blood, we actually work with a good friend of mine called Jerome Crujon. He owns the Lionheart distribution in LA, and he's a great guy. He's very, in fact, Andrew Chapner have a film with him also. So he is actually very honest and very strict and very flexible. So if you are looking for someone, Sam, reach out to him. I can connect you with him, and then you can actually send an email saying your video and then see whether or not he would be interested in represent. This
Okay.
is Willow,
Yeah, that would.
one of my 3 cats. This one
Oh,
is the one that
awesome! We get
always.
another.
He's the
We
one.
get another co-host.
She is the one that always follow me. Always want my attention. It's my
Nice.
baby.
It's too bad I don't have Missy in here. I'd have pulled her on and said, "Here's
Uh,
our other guest on the show." We always love to have an extra guest on the show like that.
yeah. See, this is where she want to lay down.
Yep, just like how Missy is. So, one more question. I like to close out the show with the fun one. Obviously, we had a lot of great discussion, a lot of informative, educational discussion for everyone. But for fun, let's say that you were stranded on a desert island and you can only take 3 movies with you for the rest of your life. What 3 movies are you bringing?
Big Trouble in Little China. Uh, Empire of the Sun. And The Hunted. The others. Sorry, the others. The others. The others with Nicole Kidman.
Okay. Cool. Any reason why you went with those 3?
I always enjoy Big Trouble in Little China. It's always a fun, stupid, silly movie that I always enjoyed. I watch it thousands of times already, so it's always I enjoyed that. The other one was The Others because with Nicole Kidman, because that was the one that actually got very scary. I don't know how, but that was I still remember it really well, and somehow that movie got me so scared I couldn't sleep at night. Now I can remember the third one I was talking about. Oh, Empire of the Sun, because it's a Steven Spielberg classic that didn't do well, but it's about hope. So if I stranded on an island, I think watching that made me a little bit hopeful.
Especially if you just got done watching the one movie that had you so scared that you can't
Exactly.
sleep. Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. All right. Well, there you have it. Thank you again for coming on the show. Really quick, where can people follow you and keep up with your work? And I'll link that in the description.
Yeah, they can find me anywhere. Just looking for my name, Johnny K. Woo, or you can use my Twitter hashtag name MDI Film. You can find me everywhere. I mean, I'm all over the places. There's no special space that I can hide, really.
Perfect. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone tuning in to this very first episode of the Indie Spotlight podcast. Remember, if you are enjoying this content and you want to learn even more about independent filmmaking, be sure to follow for more episodes featuring some incredibly talented people. Anyway, guys, until next time.
Thank you for having me, Sam. Bye.